Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I am Professor Robert E.G. Black, and this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's like we're stuck. You know, like a needle on a scratch record.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening?
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
Time.
I promise to explain everything later, but I need you to trust me.
Slow down! What are you, in a damn time loop or something?
We've come to minute 11 of Groundhog Day, which is actually a strange thing for this show in its current format, going from minute 10 just last episode to minute 11 this episode with no filler episodes, but here we are. It's time to talk about Les Podewell, Stephen Toblowsky, Ned Ryerson, and Case Western High. And we are going to get briefly sidetracked by IMDb goofs. Phil is on his way out of Cherry Street on the first iteration of February 2nd. As minute 10 ended, Florence Lancaster has just asked him if he'll be checking out today. In the second and third revisions of the script, Phil responds, unfortunately, yes. In the film, Phil puts on his coat as he answers Mrs. Lancaster, Change of Departure Today was the title for the Groundhog Day Project blog, day 1431, dated 2nd July 2020. Phil continued, 100%. Second 3, reverse, Mrs. Lancaster. She tilts her head a little and smiles sweetly. Then we are immediately back on Phil as he puts his scarf on, steps back into the entry hall, and turns toward the front door. He grabs with his right hand his coffee from a piece of furniture we cannot see to the left of the door. Then with his left hand, he opens the interior door and stops. Well, he goes through the interior door and then stops. Since they are filming on a set, I'm guessing there is nowhere to go on the other side of that door. Or maybe Murray just didn't want to go far in case Ramis wanted another take. He turns to the right as the interior door closes, and you can tell from his shadow on the curtain on the interior door's window that he has stopped moving. Of course, even in the reality of the film, he may have stopped again deliberately, because he still does not have his gloves on. Which brings me to IMDb goofs. I systematically went through every goof that IMDb had for this movie. Fairly early in the blog, day 30. I tried to edit them, but did not have a pro account at the time. Some incorrect goofs remain. Here is one. When Phil is ready to leave the bed and breakfast on the first repeat day, his scarf is outside of his unbuttoned jacket. Yet once he turns around and exits through the front door, his jacket is buttoned and the scarf is tucked inside. And another. On the second day, Phil pours himself a double coffee. Before walking towards the door to go outside, he is holding the coffee cup and both his hands are bare. The next shot from outside, a split second later, he is wearing gloves. People don't understand editing. It's a simple edit. Phil goes through the interior door. The film skips to him exiting the exterior door. And it doesn't even do that on this first iteration in minute 11. There is a space between the external door and the internal door. The film never really shows it to us, but there are windows on both of those doors, so it is definitely visible. The production uses that space to jump from the set, interior, to location, exterior. So the very simple explanation is that Phil stops in this vestibule, puts on or rearranges his scarf, his gloves, his coat, and then goes outside. IMDb goofs can come from about anyone, I would note. And out of all the people in the world, a lot of them are morons. As Phil would say.
People are morons.
It's not this minute at all, but just listen to this goof. When Phil wakes up to I Got You, Babe, the lyrics being sung are, then put your little hand in mine, there ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Good so far. This is part of the third stanza of the song. At the end of the movie, when Rita is also in the bed, the lyrics sung are the chorus, followed by, they say our love won't pay the rent. Before it's earned, our money's all been spent. This is part of the second stanza of the song. Someone noticed that the song was timed differently on the morning that Rita is there, and marked it as a goof rather than understanding that at the end of the movie it is no longer February 2nd, but rather the next day, and the timing would not be expected to be the same. They didn't understand the end of the movie. Anyway, back to minute 11. In Rubin's original, Phil puts on his coat and gloves as he descends the steps of the house. He is in a good mood, his step is jaunty, he breathes in the fresh, cold air. There are a lot of people on the street for this hour, traffic is congested, and pedestrians are going faster than cars. Everyone is pretty much going in the same direction. This is a small town. The businesses look old. It has a neighborhood feel. Phil, voiceover. I can't tell you when it began, other than to say, on Groundhog Day. And I can't tell you why it happened to me, other than to say, I deserved a break in my career, and this was certainly it. Second revision. There are a lot of people on the street for this hour. Traffic is so heavy, in fact, the pedestrians are moving faster than the cars. Everyone seems to be going in the same direction, making the annual trek to see the groundhog. An old bum is sitting on the sidewalk leaning against a storefront. Someone throws him a coin. Phil walks by without taking any notice. Final revision. An extremely red-faced and weathered old bum, old Jensen, is sitting on the sidewalk leaning against a storefront. Someone presses a coin into his hand. Phil meets old Jensen's tired gaze. He self-consciously swats his supposedly empty pockets and walks off with a shrug. Second 11. Camera is at the corner of Benton and Cass in Woodstock, Illinois, the northeast corner of the town square, looking across Benton. Across the street is Frame's Menswear, and under the awning of another shop, two women are loitering and drinking coffee. A woman and a young girl come from around the corner, heading to the right. The girl has a red Punxsutawney Phil flag. Phil rounds the corner behind them, from heading south on Benton to west on Cass. Leaning against the building at left edge of frame is Old Jensen. Old Jensen is portrayed by Les Podewell. Podewell has 21 acting credits on IMDb, from a short called Are You Popular in 1947 to an episode of Chicago Hope in 1994. From his IMDb bio and trivia. Lester Burton Podewell was born on November 3, 1907 in Chicago, Illinois, USA, the son of Edwin L. Podewell and Anna B. Burkett. He met actress Beverly Ruth Younger in the Eugene O'Neill play The Straw, in which they both had roles. They married later that year in 1937. He was a Chicago actor who starred with everyone from Chuck Norris in Equinox 1985 to Stockard Channing in Meet the Applegates 1990 to John Candy in Only the Lonely 1991. His last movie role was that of the homeless elderly gentleman befriended by Bill Murray in the film Groundhog Day 1993. He performed work in radio episodes of Sky King, The Shadow, and Little Orphan Annie. In 1985, Mr. Podewell got rave reviews for his performance in David Mamet's adaptation of Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard at the Goodman Theater in Chicago. With the advent of TV, Lester did a 2-year stint as the announcer for WLS-TV's Perspectives and appeared regularly on the local show Hawkins Falls. In the 1960s, Mr. Podewell taught at Patricia Stevens Career College. He also performed in local theater, including Sam Shepard's Fool for Love at Steppenwolf, The Sunshine Boys at Pheasant Run, and Arsenic and Old Lace at Arlington Park Theater with the Gabor sisters. He suffered a stroke and died at home on November 22, 1998, in Evanston, Illinois. An actor until the end, Mr. Podewell was taken to Evanston Hospital after his stroke. The neurologists who were trying to gauge his coherence asked him to name the President of the United States and to tell them how many fingers they were holding up. At the urging of his daughter Polly, he instead regaled them with the Player's Speech, a soliloquy from Shakespeare's Hamlet, which he last had performed in the 1930s.
Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of your players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my line. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to split the ears of the groundlings, who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise, I would have such a fellow whipped. Without Herod's. Pray you avoid it.
I warrant your honor.
Be not too tame, neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance, that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature. For anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. Now this, overdone, though it make the unskilful laugh, cannot but make the judicious grieve, the censure of which one must, in your allowance, outweigh a whole theatre of others. Oh, there be players that I have seen play, and heard others praise, and that highly. Not to speak it profanely, that having neither the accent of Christians, nor the gait of pagan, Christian, nor man, have so strutted and bellowed that I have thought that some of nature's journeymen had made men and not made them well. They imitated humanity so abominable.
I hope we have reformed that indifferently with us, sir.
So, reform it altogether. And let those that play your clown speak no more than is set down for them. For there be of them that will themselves laugh, to set on some barren quantity of spectators to laugh to, though in the meantime some necessary question of the play be then to be considered. That's villainous, and shows the most pitiable ambition in the fool that uses it. Go, make you ready.
A 1983 Cadillac Eldorado comes round that same corner along with Phil, who is walking in the street, not on the sidewalk. Across Benton, a man and woman come into frame as well, also going right. Phil turns to his right, toward camera, and comes up onto the sidewalk as a 1987 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra in the street and a lone woman on the other side of Benton come into frame from left. Camera dollies backward along with Phil's movement. Phil pats at his pockets in a show of looking for cash for the old man. The old man half-heartedly puts one hand out, expecting something from Phil. Across Benton, the extra I call Phil sign girl comes into frame along with another woman. All those pedestrian extras on the opposite side of the street angle into the street as they go, which puts them crossing diagonally roughly at the same place where we are about to meet Ned. Phil gives nothing to the old man. The old man turns with him as he passes, hand still out, looking disappointed. As Ryan Gilby describes the exchange, the homeless man begging for dimes on the street corner is taunted mercilessly by Phil, who cannot simply ignore him. He must instead pretend to be reaching for his money. That man will figure strongly in Phil's life, becoming instrumental in the enlightenment he receives. The door to the left opens. Sewing Concepts, 100 Cash Street. There is a large yellow copies sign on the door, 5 cents, though this is not a copy place. Julie Ellen Manesh latches onto this sign in her doctoral dissertation, calling it an allusion to reproduction and the two Phils, which I think is a stretch. She continues. In this, the digestion metaphor, the two entities do not necessarily become identical, but rather each is mutually influenced and expanded by the other. For example, consider a cow that eats grass, transforming both cow and grass, and the humans who drink the cow's milk. Or, in a very different example, imagine an observer of a symbol who is changed by the observation, and whose relationship with the symbol also changes the symbol by imbuing it with new meaning, by, for example, painting it, writing about it, or speaking about it. Thus, expanding the observer expands the symbol's influence by adding a new personal interpretation to the currently existing collective cultural one. In this way, the digestive metaphor is as expansive as the reproductive metaphor. Exiting Sewing Concepts, just behind Phil as he keeps walking west, are a man and woman. Presumably they work here, because according to the hours on the door, the place is not open for business this early in the morning. Sewing Concepts opens at 9 a.m. In the second, third, and final revision, Ned is introduced off-screen. Man, off-camera, hey, Phil. And then we get, in the second and third revisions, a big pie-faced man, Ned Ryerson, comes huffing and puffing right up to him. There's something about this guy that makes us dislike him on sight. The final revision instead calls him a tall, sharp-faced man. In Rubin's original, we're already in the time loop when the story begins, so the first interaction with Ned that we see is very different. Phil pauses, stretches, feels good, continues walking. Without looking down, Phil nonchalantly takes a sidestep around some unseen object and continues walking. Behind him, somebody steps in the spot he avoided and winds up ankle-deep in wet slush. Phil, voiceover, continued. How do I know these things before they happen? You may call it cheating. That's because you don't understand. I'm playing by an entirely different set of rules. Suffice it to say, it's a handy skill for a weatherman. Phil begins to slip off his right glove. A man spots Phil and lumbers toward him. Man, hey, Connors. Phil doesn't look up. He finishes taking off his glove and continues walking. Man continued. Phil Connors, hey. The man comes right up to Phil and opens his mouth to speak. Before he gets a word out, Phil slugs him. The man goes down. Phil slips on the glove and keeps walking in a good mood. Phil, voiceover. When you understand the situation in its entirety, you will not judge me so harshly. I am a rational person just like you, living an extraordinary circumstance. It is not until 58 pages into Rubin's script that we get a proper introduction to Ned, which goes a lot like the version in later revisions and in the film. For those of you that are obsessed with calculating how long Phil spends in the time loop, in that original, Phil has been hitting Ned every morning for so long that he cannot remember who Ned is or why he's hitting him. It's just something he does. In the film, Ned is introduced, center of his own frame, standing in the middle of the street. Second 19, we are looking southeast across Benton. On the opposite side of the street, parked cars, pedestrians, Stone's gift shop, Woodstock Jewelers, and Beard and Stovall. And Ned, walking northeast, stops abruptly, looking left of camera. Ned, Phil? He starts to raise a hand, then lowers it and instead rushes toward camera, toward Phil, out of frame. The timing here is actually amusing because by the time we've cut to Ned, Phil is already turned and walking away. Ned seems to have recognized him from the side rear. Ned continued. Hey, Phil! Phil! Second 25, angled on Phil. Seems to be a different take than the previous Phil shot. At least the camera has shifted right and we missed the move because of the edit. We can also see a bit higher than before. The place to the left of Frame's menswear is a bakery. The Benton street sign is visible. Phil looks to his left, our right. Ned comes rushing into frame, hand out to immediately make physical contact with Phil. Ned continued. Phil Connors? Phil moves slightly away from Ned, but also Ned lifts his hand, does a slight bow, then lowers his hand again toward Phil. Ned continued. Phil Connors, I thought that was you. From Harold Ramis's commentary track.
This is Stephen Toblowsky, who made us laugh so hard in his audition reading that we hired him on the spot.
Hey, now don't you tell me you don't remember me because I sure as
Now the homeless man in the background, of course, Les Podewell, becomes very important in the story later on. But the Ned Ryerson character, it read great in the script, and Steve he was overwhelmingly obnoxious in his audition.
And here's Stephen Toblowsky talking about his audition in The Weight of Time, an extra on the Groundhog Day DVD, along with producer Trevor Albert talking in this clip.
For my first audition, I went in, I said, Harold, I worked on this yesterday some at home, and I think it's getting kind of big. It's getting a little broad. You may need a spatula to scrape me off the walls, but I'm going to go for it, okay? And we're just going to do it. Just tell me, just kick me out of here. Just kick me out. And, so we started to go, oh, Phil, you...
Do you have life insurance, Phil? Because if you do, you could always use a little more, right? I mean, who couldn't? But you want to know something? I got the feeling you ain't got any. Am I right or am I right?
When Toblowsky came in the room, he delivered these, he's by himself, standing in a room with no wardrobe and no cameras, just doing it with the casting director, and he just cracked us up, and he totally went for it. He played it over the top, much like he does in the movie, and he was it. I mean, it was like Danny had written it for this guy.
Phil, this is the best day of my life.
Toblowsky has 300 acting credits on IMDb, from Keep My Grave Open in 1977 to just last year, 2024, episodes of The Madness, The Loud House, Lopez vs. Lopez, Nobody Wants This, and Hacks, as well as voice work for the video game Batman Arkham Shadow. His IMDb bio. Character actor Stephen Toblowsky was born on May 30th, 1951 in Dallas, Texas. Over the past 3 decades, Toblowsky has racked up a lengthy list of roles in movies and television across many different genres. While Toblowsky initially attended Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas with the intention of studying geology, he was quickly drawn into acting there. He later attended the University of Illinois for 1 year. Toblowsky worked primarily in theater during his early career and wrote and directed a few plays including Two Idiots in Hollywood and True Stories. His film career took off in the 1980s, though, thanks to roles in The Philadelphia Experiment, 1984, Nobody's Fool, 1986, Spaceballs, 1987, and Mississippi Burning, 1988. Since then, Toblowsky has appeared in many popular movies, including Burn on Wire, 1990, Basic Instinct, 1992, Groundhog Day, 1993, Radioland Murders, 1994, Murder in the First, 1995, Mr. Magoo, 1997, The Insider, 1999, Memento, 2000, Freaky Friday, 2003, Garfield the Movie, 2004. Did they just call Garfield the Movie a popular movie? Didn't that tank at the box office? And Wild Hogs, 2007. He has also done a substantial amount of voice work, most recently taking on the role of Uncle Ub in the Lorax, 2012. So I guess this bio was written then. Toblowsky has been even more prolific in television over the past few decades. He's appeared on a diverse range of shows, including Seinfeld, Mad About You, Chicago Hope, The Practice, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, and has recurring roles on CSI Miami, Deadwood, Heroes, Californication, and Glee. Toblowsky is married to fellow actor Ann Hearn. Phil takes Ned's outstretched hand in both of his own. Back at the corner, a man in a puffy blue coat stops as he rounds the corner to give some money to old Jensen. Some other pedestrians cross Benton behind him. Phil: Hi, how you doing? Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching was the title for the Groundhog Day Project blog, day 128, dated 7th December 2013. Ned: Hey. Second 32, we're on an over-the-shoulder angle, past Phil, on Ned. Numerous pedestrian extras cross behind him, left to right. Ned continued: Now don't tell me you don't remember me. You Don't Remember Me was the title for the Groundhog Day Project blog, day 351, dated 18th July 2014. Ned, his bent arms to his sides, below frame, continued: Because I sure as heck remember you. I Sure as Heck Remember You was the title for the Groundhog Day Project blog, day 276, dated 4th April 2014. Note, while the line technically is I Sure as Heck Remember, I have made a point since the blog of transcribing it as Heck Remember, because the way Toblowsky says the line fire and remember are not separate things. Reverse, over the shoulder, past Ned, on Phil. Behind Phil now is a hardware store window, a display of Easy Care paint. Phil shakes his head slowly. Phil: Not a chance. Back to Ned, goofy grin and all. Ned: Ned removes his hat. Ryerson. Beat. Then back to Phil, who looks at Ned's bald head and is perhaps even more confused by this man than he already was. As Ned starts to talk again, Phil focuses on his face, his mouth. It's like Ned is speaking a language that Phil does not understand, and Phil is trying to read his lips. Ned continued: Needle Nose Ned the Head. Ned the Head was the title for the Groundhog Day Project blog, day 282, dated 10th May 2014. Ned's got his hat on again now, and second 44, we're with the moving camera, the two-shot of Phil and Ned, in time for Ned to go with some playful punches at Phil's stomach. Two women pass by behind Phil at left of frame. On the corner behind Ned, a kid in a blue coat stops and holds up a sign. for no one to see. He's facing across Benton where there is currently no one. Ned continued, "Come on, buddy. Case Western High." That would be in Cleveland. Groundhog Day Project blog, day 302, dated 31st May 2014. I explained. Near as I can tell, the only thing resembling a high school that Case Western Reserve University had in the 60s was a pre-scholars program. There seems to be a Case Western Reserve High School in the present, but a Google search is weirdly uninformative about it. In every version of the script, Ned has a line here that doesn't make it into the film, but does show up again in the stage musical. "I see you clicking through that brain of yours. Click, 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 bing!" And among the other descriptions he offers to jog Phil's memory in Rubin's original, "Ran against me for class president, and won. Whipped my fanny on the 3-mile cross-country state meet. Took Judy Allen Smith to the homecoming dance against your better judgment and that of her father, I might add." The first two are weirdly just them, so Phil should remember Ned, so I get it. The Judy Allen Smith, kind of like the Rita Tess thing from Rubin's original, got changed to what is going to get changed to Phil's sister to make everything more personal and connected and together. There is no mention here of his identical twin brother Sandy, which I think would make him quite even more memorable. The list in the film exists pretty much as is by the second revision. Second 46, over Phil's shoulder on Ned again. More pedestrians passing behind, including a colorful coat guy who will be visible at Gobbler's Knob and who, at the banquet at the end of the film, seems to think he wouldn't fetch much money at the auction. Ned continued, "Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show. Bing!" Phil looks to the side, looking for an escape, but his focus is drawn right back to Ned again. Ned continued, "Ned Ryerson. Got the shingles real bad senior year. Almost didn't graduate. Almost didn't graduate. His enunciation on that line is fantastic. Second 56, over the shoulder, past Ned, on Phil. Phil looks down, like maybe he is starting to remember this guy. Ned continued, "Bing again." Ned raises both his hands as if to put them on Phil, but second 58, we're over the shoulder past Phil, on Ned, and Ned's hands have not been raised yet. Ned continued, "Ned Ryerson. I dated your sist," and minute 11 ends. We'll get more Ned in minute 12.
Most of life is just junk, right? It's filler. And then there's these moments.
It's a perfect day. You couldn't have planned a day like this.
Well, you can. It just takes an awful lot of work.
When all the randomness turns into something perfect. It's like life's dropping all the bullshit just for a second to show us how amazing it could be all the time if it wanted to.
I don't know. I think maybe we're supposed to become like better people. Though I honestly don't even know how that could be possible.
Whoa, now. Sounds like someone's got a case of the time loop blues.
Ever think about it? We must miss so many of them. All those tiny perfect things are just poof, gone. Lost forever. But not today.
You can make right what once went wrong.
That is a disturbingly inspirational idea, Mark.
I know, but what is this? Some kind of time loop, like a gypsy curse? Is the universe giving us a cosmic test, or am I just going fucking crazy?
Time.
The last revision is what counts, apparently.
What if we found them all? All the perfect things in this one town, in this one day. We could collect them.
Our time loop of the week this week is Turn Back the Clock, 1933. A very simple time travel film. It's not quite a time loop movie because it only happens once. But essentially, a man isn't happy with the way his life has turned out, and he gets hit by a car and gets the chance to re-experience his life from about 20 years earlier. And so he makes different choices. Immediately, one that he had already talked about, a business deal he had an opportunity for when he was, I guess he was supposed to be in his early 20s. Because he's played by the same guy in both things, just with his hair slightly different. I don't think they say his age. He ends up with a different woman. seeing the woman that he had been married to in the previous one get together with someone else, and being upset about that occasionally, but he just goes all in on using what he knows about history to become rich, attaching himself to, among other things, the White House going into World War I. The thing that makes this movie really fun is that in the end we see scenes we got in the beginning of the movie, except now Joe, our main character, is taking on the role that was Ted. Like, he's the one giving the investment opportunity to Ted, who's married to Mary, when before it was Ted giving him the investment opportunity that set him up for wanting to change his life, and now he's doing the same thing for Ted. And it could have been a really perfect looping scenario where at the end the movie follows Ted as in he gets hit by a car and wakes up in the past, and it's just going to keep repeating with them going back and forth, taking turns. But instead, Joe learns his lesson from one extra go through, and I guess he doesn't make the best moves at the end because he knows the stock market crash is coming, only roughly when. He can't remember the date, which is funny. But he keeps trying to warn people about it, and they don't believe him because he's not specific. And he ends up losing everything because, unbeknownst to him, his wife has been investing money in the stock market. Their money that was supposed to go in a trust fund. Minor spoiler. The spoiler doesn't matter. The fun is that, especially when you get to those scenes that you're seeing, with the lines basically just switch between the two actors, but almost exactly word for word, some of those lines. The weird thing, and historically strange, he is going to go down for something his bank did that has to do with the stock market crash. So he's a wanted man at the end of the movie. And police are opening fire on him with guns. He's just a banker. I don't think they've opened fire on bankers. But it's a nice visual. And he's trying to get Mary to run away with him, even though she's now married to Ted in this version of history. And major spoilers. Do I want to give major? No, I won't give you the major spoilers about how the movie does end. But no, it was fun. And I think it could have been perfect if they had been bold enough to make the end loop back to the alternate version of the beginning. It did remind me of one of my favorite books, Replay, by Ken Grimwood, where a man gets the opportunity to repeat most of his life, and then to repeat most of that, and then most of that. The loop keeps getting smaller and smaller, but he keeps getting to do some of his life over again, and try to make different choices. Turn back the clock, 1933. Notable, by the way, for having the Three Stooges appear in a cameo that isn't comedic. It apparently was their first time in a feature film, except they're not even doing comedy. They're just singers at, a club. They do have some lines other than singing, but it's not funny. They're just there.
Knew you were gonna say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, lapping, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?